Chapter 251, Gains, the Potion Formulas for the Seer Pathway. Klein leaned back in his chair and tried to communicate with the spirit via dream divination. In a gray, illusory world that didn't seem surreal, a gas lamp suddenly lit up, illuminating the stone slabs on the ground and a desk with a goatskin scroll placed on top of it. After the seer and clown formulas appeared one after another, Rosago stood there with a fur shirt, listening to a voice of unknown origins. Before the advancement, I have to warn you that you've been too reliant on divination. Divination is a revelation, a result. It is unable to tell us the process. For example, you might decide to invest all your money because your divination says that a railway stock can make money. But, in fact, what that revelation really means is that in the long run, in 30 years, the railway stock will make money, and before that, it will fall more than it rises. Fate isn't so easy to master, and there are many times when it's impossible to quantify it. Divination isn't all-powerful. In addition, divination can be interfered with and cause you to be misled. There are too many things in this world that cannot be understood. If you completely rely on divination, then you will definitely die because of it. Takach achizacha. Divination is a revelation. It must be combined with one's own carefulness, caution, and self-control. Rosago was unable to divine the corresponding danger because the language of foulness was involved with the mysterious space above the gray fog, and that led to him dying at his hands.
Otherwise, with his mystical abilities, it would have been difficult for Miss Bodyguard and I to escape today. This is also a reminder for me. Even if I had the gray fog to isolate all interferences, I cannot afford to be careless. No matter how certain my actions are, I need to leave some leeway. From these words, it seems like they aren't aware of the acting method. Otherwise, some of those words could be directly summed up as being respectful and fearful of fate.
As his thoughts raced, Klein heard Rosago's reply as he unfurled the parchment. Sequence 7, Magician. Main ingredients: 1 true root of a mistreat, all the spinal fluid of a dark-patterned black panther. Supplementary ingredients: 60 milliliters of purified water, 30 milliliters of mistreat's juice, 3 grams of droplet gem powder, 4 drops of fantasy grass essential oil.
Magician. This is also part of a circus. It can form the foundations of a circus with seers and clowns.
Klein first lampooned before he recalled the suited clown that he had encountered before.
From the looks of it, he was a magician. His abilities seemed to include the ability to fire air bullets, making flaming jumps, and drawing slips of paper as weapons. Not bad. Just being able to cast spells quickly can greatly increase my battle prowess.
As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Klein saw the scene before him change. This time it was a splendid room, surrounded by golden statues and ornaments. It was the same voice from before, but it reminded Rosago of the same thing. According to my experience, after you consume the faceless potion, you have to remember this point. You can disguise yourself into anyone, but you are ultimately yourself.
Faceless? Sequence 6 of the Seer Pathway is faceless? This should be the Beyonder power that allowed Rosago to transform into Officer Faxine. From the looks of it, the fake detective's reel was also played by him. Creeping Hunger allowed Chilangos to transform into a person with different looks. This matches this Beyonder power. From the looks of it, some faceless died at his hand. Such a power cannot augment a person in a straight-up battle, but it's more useful than 90% of all Beyonder powers on many occasions. It's no wonder that Rosago dared to come and attempt to kill me, and wasn't afraid of falling into a trap. This power is of great significance to me.
At this thought, Klein's eyes widened as he saw Rosago pick up a thin gold page with words written in Hermes, Sequence 6, Faceless. Main ingredients: mutated pituitary gland of a thousand-faced hunter, characteristic of a human skin shadow. Supplementary ingredients: 80 milliliters of a thousand-faced hunter's blood, 5 drops of black Jimson weed juice, 10 grams of dragon-tooth grass powder, 3 strands of hair from a deep-sea naga.
Thousand-faced hunter? That seems to be a type of dragon, but not a particularly powerful kind. It shouldn't be a dragon of the spiritual system, but it's still extremely rare. It's almost extinct.
Klein instantly recalled the corresponding mysticism knowledge. At this point, the scene before him didn't change, but Rozago's attire and location did. He wore a white wig, a dark tuxedo, and had a thick beard. This advancement is no longer as simple as before. The potions must be consumed in conjunction with a ritual. If you succeed, you will obtain one of the most irresistible Beyonder powers beneath that of the high-sequence Beyonders. The speaker's voice had changed, turning into one that sounded even older. Having expected that, Rozago asked,
"What's the ritual?"
"Go to the sea, find a mermaid, and drink the potion while she's singing." The speaking old man opened an ancient book that depicted countless mysterious symbols in it. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed from the book's surface as lines of ancient Hermes appeared in midair. Sequence 5, Marionettist. When Klein saw this, he suddenly had a headache. It was a signal that his spirituality was close to being drained. In the previous battle, just the language of foulness charm alone had consumed most of his spirituality. Later on, not only did he use 3 more charms from the Evernight Goddess's domain, but he had also summoned himself and responded to himself. To hold out until now showed how much progress he had made compared to before, as well as the noticeable improvement in the digestion of the clown potion. The scene flickered and was on the brink of shattering. Klein held on and scanned the remaining content of the formula. Main ingredients: dust of ancient wraiths, core crystal of a 6-winged gargoyle. Supplementary ingredients: 80 milliliters of spring water from Sonia Island's Golden Spring, 10 grams of dragobark, remnant spirituality of ancient wraiths, 1 pair of eyes from a 6-winged gargoyle. Advancement ritual: consume potion in the midst of a singing mermaid song, Kacha. Klein stopped holding out any longer as he allowed the dream to shatter into countless illusory specks of light that disappeared. He pinched his forehead, almost fainting. As the remnants of Rozago's spirituality and the hints of madness faded away, he was pushed back into the real world by an invisible force. The ground, stained with blood, brains, hair, and all sorts of fragments, entered Klein's vision. He bent over and retched a little, clearing his head a little.
I'll be sent out of the mysterious space above the gray fog when I'm out of spirituality.
Klein looked around and saw that Miss Bodyguard was still asleep. He hurriedly extinguished the candle, tidied up the items related to the ritual, and then panted heavily. After a while, he finally regained some of his spirituality. At that moment, a gust of cold wind blew at the back of his neck, causing him to shiver as his mind froze. Klein turned his head abruptly and looked at the oriel window again. He saw that Miss Bodyguard in her black Gothic regal dress had woken up and was floating in the air. Her pale blonde hair and pale face seemed to have diminished a little. Her entire person seemed less corporeal, to the point of her skin appearing somewhat transparent. Klein quickly explained according to the explanation he had thought of.
After I blew his head off, I discovered that his body was still squirming. Because I was afraid he would come back alive, I quickly used all the charms on me. I was very nervous and panicked at the time. It might have affected you. Allah, this is probably the risk that the divination had revealed earlier. If she's not satisfied with the explanation and thinks that I attacked her, then I'm finished.
Klein thought nervously. His true feelings made his performance even more perfect. Miss Bodyguard lowered her head and looked at herself, then asked with an unperturbed tone,
"What charm was it at the beginning?"
I bought a black ear at the gathering for 400 pounds. I was told that I could hear the voice of a great existence, and that if I was lucky enough, I would benefit greatly. If I was unlucky, I would die on the spot. Back then, I couldn't get a bodyguard, and since I was in such danger, I could only take the gamble. The result was pretty good.
Klein replied absolutely truthfully.
When I heard the voice of the great existence, that black ear shattered by itself and turned into such a charm.
Miss Bodyguard's blue eyes swept over him slowly. The room was silent, as if it was frozen. Finally, the lady in the black regal dress nodded.
"You had better find a psychiatrist."
Do you mean that I've become a potential lunatic? Yes, she has guessed that it was a relic of a listener, and she understands that Rozago's spirituality must have been tainted by the true creator. She wouldn't suspect that I had deliberately made her sleep to take that opportunity to perform a mediumship. It would also explain why I had gotten rid of the effects of the ravings faster than she did. After all, I am a potential lunatic created by the true creator.
Klein smirked.
Let's hurry up and clean up the scene. MI9 might come over to take a look.
He pointed at Rosago's headless body. As he spoke, Klein put on a pair of gloves and squatted down to look for any relics. He quickly found more than 10 pounds in cash, some essential oils and herbal powder, 2 crudely cut paper figurines, and a strange piece of paper. This piece of paper was orange in color, and on it were symbols corresponding to the sun. The magic emblem formed a blank rectangle, and just by holding it in his hand, he found it very warm and sedate. Klein didn't hide his puzzlement.
What is this?
Without him realizing it, Miss Bodyguard was already floating behind him. She answered simply,
A mystical object corresponding to a notary.
Notary? Klein was surprised at first, but he soon remembered that Rosago was an intelligence officer in the Intis Republic. People there believed in the eternal blazing sun and the god of steam and machinery. Similarly, the eternal blazing sun was also the god of deeds.
This is the sequence 6 or sequence 5 of the Bard pathway.
If the notarization is valid, the Beyonder powers will be temporarily enhanced. If the notarization is invalid, the Beyonder powers will be forcefully dispersed. Miss Bodyguard didn't explain any further and gave a rough description of its use. Klein was about to say something when he saw an eerie glow emitting out of Rosago's headless body and bloody brain mush. They attracted each other to form a blob that transformed into a black, pupilless eye. Klein asked again, feigning ignorance.
Then, what is this?
Miss Bodyguard maintained her way of speaking.
Something worthless.
Klein asked with a frown.
Worthless?
He actually understood what Miss Bodyguard meant. Normally, if Rosago eventually lost control, he would leave behind a strange and terrifying sealed artifact. If he didn't, his Beyonder characteristic could be used as the main ingredient of a marionettist. In short, it would be of great value. However, the problem was that he hadn't lost control but was also tainted by the true creator. Hence, it had become a potion's main ingredient that was branded by an evil god. Using it to concoct a marionettist potion was equivalent to committing suicide by ingesting poison. Miss Bodyguard looked at the entirely black eye and said in a low and ethereal voice,
It has been contaminated by an evil god. It has no value anymore.
If it really is of value, and one that's very valuable, I would even worry that you would finish me off in passing.
Klein pointed at Rosago's remains and said,
These are our common spoils of war. We'll each pick a few. You first.
Miss Bodyguard shot him a glance. Without a word, she floated over and took the notary certificate.
Just like I thought. In the future, I should find and learn the knowledge and mysticism to remove an evil god's contamination.
Klein took out an iron cigar case and bent down to pick up the black eye. Chapter 252, Epilogue. As soon as Klein's fingers touched the black eye, he heard illusory sounds as a throbbing pain seared through his head. But, at the same time, something strange appeared in his vision. These were countless illusory black threads that spread out from Miss Bodyguard and his own body. They emanated from their bodies, out into the void towards some boundless distance. This was a scene that would horrify people with trypophobia. Klein suddenly gritted his teeth, unable to endure the corruptive feeling any longer as he placed the black eye into the iron cigar case. Everything restored to normal, and the negative side effects he suffered subsided. Only then did Klein have the energy to make guesses.
Is that the essence of a marionettist Beyonder powers? It allows one to see and control certain threads connecting every person's body and spirit? What a pity that it's contaminated. The side effects are too great, and it cannot be used as a mystical item. For now, disregarding an attempt to purify it above the gray fog, this will be considered the second time that I'm provoking the true creator, so it is very likely that he would prepare himself and seek me out. If that happened, I probably wouldn't have a chance of reviving again. I should learn and master the relevant knowledge before making the decision.
Phew, he exhaled, and after Miss Bodyguard chose the crude paper figurines and the corresponding materials, he bent down again to pick up the 13 pounds 5 soldi and 8 pence. Then, looking at Rozago's headless body and the blood all over the floor, he said, with a slight headache,
Let's clean up the scene.
The pale blonde Miss Bodyguard floated to the side and calmly said,
Let me do it.
You?
Klein stopped, puzzled and shocked, before turning his head. Miss Bodyguard floated to Rozago's side, crouched down, and went to lie down over the body. She slowly sank in and fused with the corpse. The fingers of Rozago's body twitched twice, and the blood, brain, matter, and fragments around it flowed backward, forming a new head at the neck. However, the head was covered with countless cracks, just like a disgusting toy made from tiny fragments. It was like glass that had been shattered, but didn't crumble immediately. There was still blood and brain matter flowing inside it, as well as the reflection of the bullet from the revolver. Klein couldn't help but take a step back, feeling that this was definitely one of the most terrifying forms in any ghost story. Rozago's corpse climbed to its feet, picked up the police cap, and half covered its face. The murder scene had been cleaned, leaving 0 traces.
Incomparable professionalism.
Klein marveled in his heart. He watched as Miss Bodyguard steered the corpse to lumber to the door. He subconsciously warned her,
Don't take a carriage or walk in brightly lit places. It would frighten the carriage driver and other passers-by.
Miss Bodyguard didn't stop, completely ignoring his words. Suddenly, Klein thought of something. He realized what he had overlooked as he quickly added,
On the way back, go to the Rice police station, Sergeant Faxine's home, or search around Minsk Street for the clothes Rozago was originally wearing. Rozago came wearing a police uniform, and the powers of a faceless were obviously limited to himself, so where were his previous clothes? He couldn't have been wearing a police uniform all night. If MI9 and the police found Rozago's clothes nearby and realized that I'm not hurt, things would be a little tricky. Ms. Bodyguard is an expert that's not considered a legal beyonder. For a normal detective to pay £1,000 to hire a bodyguard is enough to arouse suspicion.
Klein kept thinking, trying to seal all the loopholes ahead of time. Just as he was about to use his divination ability to help Miss Bodyguard find Rozago's old clothes and return the missing uniform, Rozago's corpse paused and replied in a rusty voice,
I know.
She seems very confident. Oh, right. Miss Bodyguard's state is between the physical body and the spirit body, and the principle behind divination is to travel the spirit world with an astral projection. Thus, she can rely on her instincts to divine.
Having realized this, Klein didn't say another word. Talk! He handed the cartridge case to Rozago's corpse and watched it open the door, walk out, and close the door politely.
The spoil of war that I chose is a beyonder characteristic contaminated by the true creator. I believe that no one would be able to divine it. Even if they did, they would feel the danger ahead of time and wouldn't dare to proceed with the divination.
While thinking over the matter, Klein walked back to the sofa and sat down, feeling a lingering sense of fear. The battle had lasted no more than 1 minute, nor had it been fierce enough to destroy anything. But the ferocity and danger of it had been second only to what he had experienced when facing Megos and the baby in her womb. Even with the powerful Miss Bodyguard and the language of foulness, he had almost fallen under Rozago's control and killed without being able to put up a resistance.
The ability of a marionettist is very odd and very powerful. According to the law of beyonder characteristics conservation, the beyonder characteristic left behind by Rozago should include all of the main ingredients of the potions, sequences 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. If it wasn't contaminated by an evil god, if it was matched with the supplementary ingredients, an ordinary person could instantly become a sequence 5 beyonder. Of course, this kind of advancement method, one depending entirely on luck, has long been abandoned by history. It's the most primitive and most dangerous method. Advancing step by step, according to the sequence, is the best way that has been verified by the lives of countless predecessors. If I can get rid of the corruption of the true creator in the future, then I can also use the beyonder characteristic left behind by Risago when advancing from sequence 6 to sequence 5. The additional characteristics will only make me stronger, like the captain.
As Klein recalled the past, he raised his hand to pinch his forehead. He turned to think about something more important.
Risago's appearance meant that the struggle for the manuscript had ended. Could his lack of charms have to do with him finishing all his charms in the battle? To come at such a critical juncture, it's likely he had the intention of diverting attention. MI9 probably didn't expect him to seek revenge so boldly under such circumstances. They didn't send anyone to monitor me, and could only passively wait for Risago to give them the signal. Risago was Bakerland's assistant, and his actions should be directed only by Bakerland. After his death, as long as Bakerland is dead, there would be no more latent dangers left. I wonder if the assassination has begun, or if it succeeded. Tonight, because of the battle over Helmosuen's manuscript, the powers defending Bakerland would be at its weakest. If it were me, I'd definitely not miss this opportunity. I'm sure Bakerland didn't think that someone would assassinate him.
With nothing to do, Klein fished out a coin and, recited with a suppressed tone,
Bakerland is already dead.
Ding! The penny tumbled in the air and fell down into the palm of Klein's hand, head facing up. It meant a positive result.
Bakerland is dead? The assassination was a success?
Klein was overjoyed. His tensed-up nerves immediately relaxed. Without Risago's interference, he believed that the result was correct.
This matter has finally ended.
Klein took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. He leaned back slowly on the sofa and looked out of the window at the faint crimson moon amid his fatigue and relief. Inside the Intis Republic's embassy, 2 military officials were squatting beside Bakerland's body, examining the cause of his death. Their partners and their superior had already gone out, chasing in a bid to capture the assassin. However, everyone knew that it was already too late. There was no hope left. One of the military officials said in a low voice,
"There's severe lung damage, suspected to be the result of a disease. An extremely strong fatal blow, one much stronger than all the Sequence 5 Beyonder attacks I've ever seen."
Another military official stood up and began to describe the situation as if he was talking to himself.
Disease? On the floor and on the bed, there are obvious marks of flesh and blood magic on the ground and on the bed, but none on the wall. Besides, the commotion of the fight wasn't transmitted outside. Finally, with the lethal blow having the characteristics of corruption and obliteration, there are at least 4 unconnected Beyonder powers.
He suddenly stopped and looked at the other military official, Gu Quyen. They said in unison,
"Shepherd."
After a few seconds of silence, the squatting military official frowned and said,
It might be a group with at least 4 different Beyonders.
The standing military official denied the guess as he hesitantly said,
Then, we'll wait to be judged. It's normal for us not to discover the infiltration of a single Rose Bishop, but how did the other 3 do it? It's impossible. However, I have heard of another sequence that can create similar effects. I think it's called Scribe. I don't know what pathway it is, nor do I know which organization it belongs.
The squatting military official nodded and said,
A shepherd is the prime suspect. The Aurora Order are a bunch of lunatics. It's nothing odd for them to do anything. Let's begin investigating the identity of the woman that seduced the ambassador. Damn it, the Lowen Kingdom definitely won't permit our investigations.
The standing military official shook his head in frustration.
Those Aurora Order bastards are lunatics who deserve to be fucked by donkeys.
They were bound to be punished for the ambassador's assassination. At 15 Minsk Street, Klein pretended as though nothing had happened. Putting up with his fatigue, he flipped through the papers. After about 20 minutes, he suddenly saw Miss Bodyguard, in her black regal dress and long, pale blonde hair, appear in the oriel window. Klein subconsciously asked,
Is it done?
Miss Bodyguard nodded slightly without a word.
Phew.
Klein thought for a moment before saying,
Thank you for your protection. This matter ends here. I'll pay you the remaining 900 pounds in 2 days. As you know, there's a withdrawal limit. Or should I hand it over to Merrick?
The pale-faced lady opened and closed her mouth, her voice seemingly ethereal as it echoed in the air.
Just give it to me. I promise to protect you for 3 days, not just once.
Lady, you really abide by the contract. However, this would be very inconvenient for me. Are you going with me to catch the adulterers in bed tomorrow? 3 days. Today is Thursday, and the protection would be over by Sunday afternoon. Yes, thankfully, it wouldn't affect the tarot gathering.
Klein rubbed his forehead and said,
All right. How should I address you?
You don't need to know.
Miss Bodyguard lifted her Gothic regal dress, bowed slightly, and disappeared from the oriel window. Chapter 253, Night Thoughts. She really has. Quite the character. Klein smiled in response to Miss Bodyguard's reply, a very obvious smile.
Yes, to be able to fend off Rosago, a marionettist, for a short period of time to the extent of having a seesaw battle, she's most likely a Sequence 5 Beyonder. I wonder what sequence pathway she belongs to and what her potion name is. Her state is rather unique. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have even had the chance to use the language of foulness.
Klein picked up the newspaper beside him and pretended to read, but he was actually thinking. However, he quickly turned his attention back to the issue of whether there were still loopholes on the matter. For example, the contaminated Beyonder characteristic left behind by Rosago had an intense luster of spirituality. It was very likely that it couldn't be concealed by the iron cigar case alone, so it would be exposed under the prying eyes of others using spirit vision. Klein secretly activated his spirit vision and looked down at his pocket. He could see faint, colorful lusters emanating from within the iron cigar case, but it wasn't obvious and was rather thin. This was mixed with the color of his own aura, making it difficult to distinguish or detect it.
That's right. Only a high-sequence Beyonder can identify it through 2 levels of interference. No wonder all kinds of materials like herbal powders and the corresponding essential oil extracts are kept in metal bottles and not wooden vessels. It's because they contain spirituality, and those with better spirit vision can see through wood and see the color of the auras.
Klein suddenly understood some of the important details in mysticism. In the past, he did things according to the rules without considering the reasons behind them, but now he understood the underlying reason behind the rules. After repeatedly checking and ensuring that everything was in order, Klein put down the newspapers and walked to the second floor. He had originally planned to take off his clothes and take a bath to completely relax himself, but when he thought of how Miss Bodyguard could appear out of nowhere in his house, he felt a little uneasy. Therefore, he only washed his face, brushed his teeth, and soaked his feet in hot water. Returning to his bedroom and taking off his coat, Klein hid his belongings before he collapsed onto the bed. As he was exhausted and had held on for quite a while, he ended up with tense nerves that prevented him from quickly falling asleep. Opening his eyes to look at the crimson moonlight on the ceiling, Klein didn't attempt to sleep with the help of cogitation. Instead, he aimlessly unfurled his thoughts as if he were riding a horse without pulling at the reins. As his thoughts wandered, he quickly noticed a problem having encountered too many coincidences in Tinjin City and later learning how it was related to Sealed Artifact 008.
My second case, after arriving at Backland, allowed me to get the next 3 potions formulas. Is that too much of a coincidence? Although this is in line with the revelation from my divination, Backland contains the opportunities for me to become powerful. Isn't it too fast and simple? Simple doesn't refer to the difficulty, but rather to the degree of twists and turns in the matter. This matter was very difficult and dangerous, but it wasn't complex and appeared simple. According to my expectations, I would have gathered information regarding the secret order through Miss Justice, Mr. Hanged Man, and Miss Zio and her companion, and then I would catch the tail of this ancient organization. After numerous twists and turns, I would eventually obtain the formulas, and that would have taken at least 3 months. Who knew that I would have succeeded in less than 3 weeks? It can't be that it was arranged by someone again, right? Yes. Let me think through the circumstances again. It's no coincidence that the Intisir public is related to the secret order. Emperor Rozel's diary has confirmed this circumstantially. The abilities of the seer and faceless are very suited for an intelligence organization. For a mid-sequence beyonder of a similar pathway to become the assistant of an intelligence czar like Bakerland is reasonable and normal. That's not a coincidence. The reason that the ambassador sent someone to take revenge on me likely has to do with him wanting to divert attention. Then sending Rozago, who can most easily succeed and escape, is a choice with reduced risk. That's not surprising at all. It was quite normal for Ian to look for new detectives in the papers, after none of the detectives he knew were willing to accept his mission of tracking down Zrio. There weren't many new detectives advertising on the papers at the time, and I was probably the only one. Well, I was the only one on the Backland Bulletin. Just like what I've concluded previously, the problem with Mirso was that he was too rash, and I was worried that it's not easy to disguise myself usually, as it can end up attracting more attention. Therefore, I didn't try to disguise myself. Although these two possibilities, especially the former, has the probability of being influenced, it does match the corresponding person's personality, mentality, and origins. And this isn't the main point. This doesn't explain the problem of how my second case ended up involving a mid-sequence beyonder of the seer pathway. It was destined by fate? That doesn't feel right. Thinking ahead, after I transmigrated, the first and second case I found myself embroiled in was related to the seer pathway. Of course, it could be explained as an arrangement by 008. Right, the Antigonus family's notebook even corrupted the misfortune cloth puppet and showed me the complicated vertical eye symbol that involves the Antigonus family's treasure. The reason I came up with back then was that with the termination of the Antigonus family's bloodline, it viewed me, a seer who had survived despite having interacted with it, as its inheritor. Now that I think about it, this reason is extremely trifling. What if I'm a devout believer of the Evernight goddess? However, I only made a guess at that time and didn't confirm it. The Antigonus family's treasure is obviously related to the seer pathway. Thinking deeper, why did I transmigrate? Why did I happen to possess Klein's body, and not anyone else? Back then, Klein had just proceeded with dark divination and was made to commit suicide by the Antigonus family's notebook. And that notebook is clearly related to the seer pathway. In addition, the first time I saw Rozel's diary, it had content that involved his regret of not choosing apprentice, marauder, or seer. That was very coincidental. From beginning to end, except for those parts involving 008, everything appeared to be in a mess. It doesn't seem like a conscious arrangement, but more like a kind of passive attraction, a mutual attraction, an attraction that has breaks between them. I attract things and items regarding the seer pathway, and at the same time, I'm attracted to them? It does seem odd thinking about it. This kind of attraction even directly influences fate, preventing even Mr. Azek from seeing through it? Is there some strange characteristic to me? And this characteristic allows me to resurrect a limited number of times?
With this in mind, Klein suddenly had the impulse to go above the gray fog to perform a divination and confirm his ideas. But he quickly rejected this idea not only because Miss Bodyguard might be watching in the mirror, but also because he believed that his greatest characteristic was the mysterious space above the gray fog. Therefore, it was obviously impossible for him to have an answer if he were to use it to divine about it.
At least for now, there aren't any obvious signs of manipulation. It would be acceptable if it's just pure attraction. And I've already chosen a beyonder pathway. That cannot be changed until sequence 4, so I can only take things one step at a time. Right, I should be firm about not heading to the Hornasis mountain range to seek out the Antigonus family's treasure. Heh, I have a feeling that I would say how nice it is in the future when I actually do it.
Klein silently made a self-deprecating remark as he felt his exhaustion gradually wash over him. His eyelids couldn't help but close. The last thought before he fell asleep was,
I should participate in more Beyonder gatherings and gather the corresponding Beyonder ingredients for Magician through Miss Justice, Mr. Hanged Man, and the Sun. I wouldn't reject anything for Faceless if they were available. In addition, I should obtain mystical items that have less severe negative effects. Before my digestion and increase in strength, it's best to have more life preservation abilities. Apart from this, investing, taking on jobs, saving up money, and attempts to look for Lenivus to use him as the starting point for my revenge, can also be considered a form of practice.
Those were Klein's future plans. At 7 in the morning, he woke up as usual. It was still gloomy and hazy outside. Klein got up and walked to the door. As he passed by the full-length mirror, he saw that Miss Bodyguard had suddenly appeared. She wore the same black bonnet. Her face was as pale as ever. Her voice pierced through the glass and slipped into Klein's ear in an ethereal fashion.
Someone from MI9 came last night.
I should say, as expected, the police came late, but I still have to thank them for being late.
Klein smiled and asked,
They didn't find anything, right?
In regards to the answer, he was very certain that if MI9 had discovered something, he wouldn't have been able to sleep undisturbed.
No.
Miss Bodyguard's figure faded and disappeared into the mirror.
This ability of hers is very powerful. Even spirit vision can't detect her. Perhaps she can be seen with Rosago's beyond her characteristic? Find Miss Bodyguard through those hidden threads?
Klein's mind stirred as he returned to the bed and took out the iron cigar case from under his pillow. Just as he touched it, before he could even open it, a bone-piercing cold rushed at his neck. He felt his hairs stand on end and his entire body trembled. Pow! His hand loosened and the iron cigar case fell to the ground.
This is a warning from Miss Bodyguard.
Klein laughed dryly, pretending as though nothing had happened as he stuffed the iron cigar case into his pocket. After washing up and putting on his clothes, he arrived at the first floor and took out the newspapers that he had subscribed to from his letterbox. Flipping open the Tussock Times, Klein saw the headline, Intis Ambassador to Backlund Murdered. Terrorist Organization, the Aurora Order, claims responsibility.
The result is out so quickly? Besides, the Aurora Order had only accepted a job, so why would they claim responsibility? Yes. A terrorist organization needs to show off their stature and build up their image. Only then would they be able to attract enough fresh blood. This complements their secret preachings. Mr. A is very good. He should be a shepherd.
Klein stood in the hallway, reading the news. According to the news, there was evidence of the Aurora Order's assault on Ambassador Bakerland. In the follow-up investigation, they found a letter deliberately left behind by the Aurora Order, which claimed responsibility for it. At the end of the news, the reporter briefly introduced the Aurora Order and listed some of the illegal crimes that they had committed. Their fame instantly surpassed most of the secret organizations.
Regardless, this matter had come to an end.
Klein exhaled, turned his head to look out the window, and he saw a thin mist filling the air as a drizzle began pattering down.
Shouldn't there be bright sunshine and sunny weather during such moments?
Klein gave a self-deprecating laugh. And now he had to go out to catch some adulterers. Chapter 254, Various Parties. In Empress Borough, the opulent villa of Earl Hall. Audrey, with a white napkin covering her, watched as the dining maidservant cut her a piece of bacon, laid out 2 fully fried eggs, spread fruit jam on a piece of soft bread, and added sauce to some grilled mushrooms. In a true noble family, maidservants were divided into many categories. Apart from personal maids, there were maids for the different bedrooms, study room maids, activity room maids, guest room maids, dressing maids, shoe maids, jewelry maids, dining maids, laundry maids, and kitchen maids. They were strictly assigned to their own tasks, with one task handled by one maid. Although this was a great waste of manpower, for nobles, propriety was everything. Unless there was a large amount of debt, they would never reduce their requirements in such matters. Audrey took a sip of the brownish-red tea, allowing the faint scent of malt and rose slush in her mouth. At this moment, she heard her father, a member of Parliament of the House of Lords, the powerful banker, Earl Hall, mumbling as he held a newspaper in his hands. Earl Hall mumbled,
"The Aurora Order is really crazy."
Audrey blinked and asked curiously,
Aurora Order? What did they do?
"Oh, baby, you don't want to know. They assassinated the Intis Ambassador Bakerland. It does them no good."
Earl Hall shook his head as he flipped through the newspaper. Audrey's elder brother, the Count's eldest son, Hibbert Hall, swallowed the grilled mushrooms in his mouth and expressed his opinion.
Perhaps they want to destroy the relationship between the kingdom and Intis and let the war spread from the colonies to the northern continent.
This child of noble birth had a handsome face and bright golden hair. He looked like a classical sculpture, regardless of which angle one viewed him from. Dai jali tasai zali, Earl Hall directed his son.
No, if that was the case, then they wouldn't leave behind so much obvious evidence. Moreover, recently, the kingdom has too many new policies that will be implemented, and will need some time to stabilize the environment, so we won't rashly start a war. What happened last night was already reported in the newspaper this morning, and the details of the events and the murderer are enough to explain the thoughts of His Majesty and the ministers.
Audrey listened to her father and brother discuss the matter in a daze before realizing what had happened.
Bakerland has been assassinated? Mr. A succeeded? He really is from the Aurora Order? The reason why he intentionally exposed that it was the Aurora Order who did it was to prove that he was the one who completed the task and that he hadn't cheated me out of my money. This is too fast and efficient. I only paid the first sum yesterday afternoon, and I'm hearing the result this morning. A good result.
Audrey was astonished and delighted. It was an uncontrollable joy, but also an instinctive fear. It was definitely something to be happy about, since the mission entrusted by Mr. Fool's Blessed had been accomplished so easily. However, the power and actions displayed by Mr. A and the Aurora Order who was backing him left Audrey subconsciously scared.
Thankfully, I talked with Clayton yesterday and reached a loan agreement. As a Viscount, he should have successfully raised the money without drawing attention to himself. I'll give Mr. A the remaining funds in the coming 2 days through CO and Fours. I can't afford to show my face. I won't be attending Mr. A's gathering for the next month or two. It's good that I already have other circles.
Audrey took a reserved bite of the soft bread which was slathered with jam. As breakfast drew to a close, small cakes of cream, cherries, and strawberries were served to her plate, and she suddenly felt a little smug as she calmed down.
Mr. Hanged Man wanted to take part in the mission, but he might have only just now completed his initial assignment. But it's already over. Serves him right to be at sea.
Audrey was in a good mood, and she was smiling as she savored the dessert. At Hillston Borough, Zio and Fours looked at the newspaper in front of them and made no further movements for a long time. Zio looked at her friend with a shocked and puzzled look.
This was done by Mr. A, wasn't it?
Fours turned the stone bracelet on her wrist and shook her head in a daze.
Perhaps.
I know about the Aurora Order, but I don't know if Mr. A is a member of the Aurora Order.
Shio said with uncertainty.
He should be. After all, we only gave him £2,000 yesterday. I doubt anyone else would also want to assassinate Ambassador Bakerland.
Fours was silent for a few seconds before she suddenly sighed and said,
Whether it was Mr. A or not, we still have to give him the remaining £8,000. At the moment, no one can prove that he didn't do it. If we want to stay in this circle, we can't renege on the debt.
Anyway, we're not the ones paying, and we'll still get £500 for the work.
With that, Zio became happy. Burris. Force pondered and said,
The thing is, I always have a feeling that finding Mr. A again would be dangerous. I'll go by myself to make the last payment. It'll be better for the both of us.
Gio was a little worried.
But
Fours shook the bracelet on her wrist and said in a disdainful tone,
If you follow me, it'll affect my escape.
Gio scratched her short, rough blonde hair as she helplessly replied.
All right then.
While the two of them were fretting about this, a new message from Mr. A came to them from a private communication channel. He told them not to look for him, but to deposit the rest of the money in separate anonymous accounts at different banks. Phew! Gio and Fours breathed a sigh of relief in unison. In a basement that was as wide as a temple, Mr. A, wearing a hooded black robe, was kneeling in the darkness, murmuring something reverently. In front of him was a 3-meter statue of a man hanging upside down with his legs chained up. This hanged man had a giant's unique single vertical eye, and his arms were stretched out horizontally, forming a cross. At this moment, a man with a black robe came in and humbly reported,
Mr. A, I've already sent the news.
Mr. A said, without turning his head.
Well done.
The man in the black robe asked curiously,
Why don't you let us investigate who commissioned this mission?
Mr. A lowered his head and said with an indifferent tone,
There's no need. You must remember that this is a critical moment. We will cause chaos throughout the continent, try our best to attract the attention of others, and use these to welcome the return of our Lord. Ha ha ha, cough, cough, cough.
Mr. A suddenly laughed before he started having a fit of coughing. It was so serious that he fell to the ground. Cough! Cough! He coughed out blood-colored fragments, which continued squirming after falling to the ground as if they were alive. The man in the black robe immediately lowered his head, pretending as though he had seen nothing. After quite some time, Mr. A finally calmed down. He crawled forward, his mouth pressed against the ground as he licked all the blood-colored fragments that he had coughed out back into his mouth. 126 New Year Street, Hillston Borough. The relaxed Klein didn't tail Dorgu Gale this time. Instead, he chose his mistress, Erica Taylor. After all, adultery needed two to clap. The pretty blonde with the intricate makeup arrived early at the Epilogue Club via a rental carriage. Klein, who carried a suitcase containing a portable camera and all sorts of disguises, followed her in. Wearing the club's frost badge on his chest, he asked the elegant maid responsible for receiving guests today.
Are there any more rooms to rest in?
The maid, wearing a black and white dress, politely smiled. Yes, please follow the attendant upstairs. Klein nodded slightly. He followed the red-vested attendant up the stairs and arrived at the second floor, just in time to see Erica Taylor enter a lounge that faced the streets. The red-vested attendant asked politely,
Do you want to see the passers-by on the street or the tennis court out back?
Klein answered casually in a deliberate manner,
Let's do the street.
Under the arrangements of the red-vested attendant, he and Erica Taylor's room was separated by 2 rooms, and he could also see the street outside the club.
How do I take a picture later? Should I find a chance to sneak in and hide in the room, or climb out of the window and travel across the pipes? Neither of these methods can conceal that exaggerated flash, but the latter can be disguised as a vogue shot from the outside. That wouldn't bring suspicion to me, and I wouldn't be kicked out. However, this will be easily noticed by Dorgu and Erica. Use a charm to put them to sleep? No, it wouldn't be convincing enough. It has to be a picture of them doing the deed. There's only one chance, and I have to take it well enough. This isn't my field of expertise, as I'm not some artistic master. If it was old Neil, he would definitely attempt to conjure a new ritualistic magic to hide the camera flash. Of course, the goddess might not respond to his request.
As Klein considered his next move, he saw the image of Miss Bodyguard appear in a silver mirror in the room. She was still wearing her black Gothic regal dress and her matching soft hat. Her hair was pale blonde in color, with delicate features across her pale face. Hi, Klein asked casually.
Do you have any way of hiding the flash of the camera?
Before he could finish his sentence, he saw ripples on the surface of the silver mirror as a slightly transparent palm suddenly extended. Miss Bodyguard came out of the silver mirror like a ghost, walked in front of Klein and said with a nod,
Yes.
She lowered her body and leaned over, slowly fusing into the camera's lens. Klein's mouth slightly opened as he watched this horrifying scene, taking quite a while to recover from his shock. He picked up his portable camera and tried a test shot in his lounge. The effect was beyond his expectations. The flash was limited to the vicinity of the camera, and the resulting image was also quite good.
Perhaps it should now be called a spectral camera.
Klein lampooned. He took the camera, went to the window, and patiently waited. Not long after, he saw Dorgu Gale arrive via carriage. In the other room, Erica Taylor saw her lover and hastily left the lounge to meet him on the first floor. Klein seized the opportunity to use a tarot card to open her room, carefully hiding in the cupboard where the extra sheets and quilts were kept.
The darkness around him reminded him of the previous night, of that creepy and terrifying Numblewright master, Rosago. Last night was filled with danger, yet today, here I am catching adulterers in the act. Life sure is marvelous.
While Klein was making fun of himself, he heard the door open. Chapter 255, Photography Expert. Huddled in the cupboard, Klein secretly activated his spirit vision and saw two interfering auras enter. A deep voice sounded as the door closed.
Erica, I brought you a present.
Klein couldn't help but lampoon.
As expected, he's a gentleman of the Loan Kingdom. Even in an affair, he seems a little old-fashioned. If it was a man from Intis, he would definitely be shouting sweetheart, baby, angel, and the like.
Of course, this was based on the stereotypes from newspapers, magazines, and novels. Erica Taylor asked in surprise,
Let me guess. Is it Fassman eye cream, face cream, or essence? Or Lashini's?
Klein was stunned by what he heard.
What the heck are all those?
It was clear that Dorgu Gale wasn't able to react in time either. It took him about 8 seconds before he said,
No, stockings.
In this world, since oil hasn't been discovered, there were no corresponding cheap chemical products. Therefore, silk stockings were considered high-class items. Erica's joy didn't diminish.
Not bad. Let me take a look.
Dorgu said in a flaunting tone.
I bought them yesterday at Phillips. 1 pair for 30 soli, a total of 5 pairs.
How expensive?
That's expensive.
Erica and Klein both said the same thing, one exclaiming, the other secretly sighing. Klein clicked his tongue.
Benson has worked for so many years, earning only £1 10 soli a week, which is 30 soli. That's just equivalent to a pair of stockings. And with that salary, he was able to provide his brother and sister with an education, feed them fairly well, and even provided them with a place to sleep. An average worker with a bit of skill would only be paid around 20 soli a week.
As he spoke, the color of his aura turned more vivid, and Klein guessed that he had taken off his coat.
No, it's not expensive. Silk stockings are worth that much. I even gave an extra tip of 5 soli.
Erica Taylor softly said in a suggestive manner.
Then I'll give it a try.
The corner of Klein's mouth twitched as he watched red colors flowing across red colors, signifying the passion between the two was igniting like fire.
I feel like I'm watching a porno again, and it's even a live broadcast. Besides, Miss Bodyguard is also here.
While listening to the wheezing and the low laughter, Klein judged the movements and positions of the couple outside by the change in the color of their auras.
The purple color is almost red and isn't stopping. Red wrapped around green, orange.
Feeling that this was enough, Klein silently pushed open the cupboard door and looked in the direction of the bed. Dorgu and Erica were already entangled, their clothes half undone, their movements intense. Klein lifted the spectral camera and aimed it at the passionate couple, waiting to see their faces at the same time. As Dorgu and Erica fell back onto the bed, Klein finally captured the most appropriate frame and pressed the shutter button. The click of the camera wasn't distinct, and the intense flash and other abnormalities were limited to a very small area, so the couple wasn't alarmed. With no confidence in his photography skills, Klein added a few more shots, intending to have options to choose from later. He was only planning on handing his employer a single picture because too many photos would make the lawyers suspect why the couple didn't notice him taking the picture. A piece of underwear landed lightly on the floor, and the sound of breathing intensified as Klein grabbed his portable camera and adeptly rolled out of the cupboard, closing the door behind him. He rolled on the floor until he reached the lounge's door. Then, he quietly pulled it open and returned to the corridor. With a sigh of relief, Klein politely closed the door in silence, pressed his hand to his chest, and bowed in the direction of the bed.
Done.
Without further ado, he returned to his lounge. Klein put down his portable camera and sighed with emotion in his heart.
The last £7 will soon be obtained, and I also earned an additional Epilogue Club membership worth £50. It covers board, lodging, and entertainment. That's worth even more than £50. Without any connections or contacts, I wouldn't have been able to join this, even with £100. This mission isn't bad at all. It's simple, safe, and profitable.
At that moment, a hand suddenly stretched out from the camera lens. Miss Bodyguard in her black regal dress slowly came out and floated in midair again, but her face remained pale. Thinking of how he had led her to watch some porno, Klein tried to change the topic in embarrassment.
I plan on heading to the cafeteria to eat something. Do you want to come with me?
Each member could bring one guest. As for how to explain the sudden appearance of the guest, Klein's plan was to go out for a while and then come back. Miss Bodyguard replied in a neutral tone.
I can go without eating for 2 weeks.
As she spoke, she turned her back to Klein and floated toward the mirror, disappearing in an instant. Klein thought curiously, putting the portable camera back in its case.
What exactly is her sequence?
After doing all of this, he went to the bathroom and relieved himself. After washing his hands and wiping his face, Klein looked into the mirror and examined his appearance. As he hadn't shaved this morning, he had quite a stubble. His hair was parted to the sides in a 3:7 ratio, and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses hung on his face. He looked refined and scholarly, with a tinge of maturity. Klein took out his golden pocket watch, opened it, and walked out of the bathroom. He took his suitcase and went to the cafeteria on the first floor.
There's a definite difference from the past. I can still be recognized if scrutinized. Once my beard grows to a certain extent, I wouldn't have to worry that much. I wouldn't need to be afraid of anything when I advanced to Sequence 6 Faceless.
It was just after 9, so breakfast was still served. Klein chose a double-sided, half-cooked fried egg, a loaf of white bread, a cake of butter, a desi pie, a serving of bacon, and a cup of marquis black tea with a piece of lemon floating on its surface. While looking for a seat, he suddenly saw a familiar face. It was the surgeon who had recommended him to the club, Aaron Cyrus. The tall, thin gentleman was sitting alone in the corner, having finished his breakfast and was sipping his coffee as he leafed through the newspaper. Klein walked over and greeted the slightly cold Aaron.
Good morning, Dr. Cyrus.
The surgeon nudged the frame over his nose and said,
Just call me Aaron, Detective Moriarty.
According to the principle of reciprocity, you have to call me Sherlock.
Klein sat down.
Any news today? I came out in such a hurry that I haven't read the newspapers.
Aaron expressed his feelings.
The Intis ambassador was assassinated. A terrorist organization by the name of the Aurora Order declared responsibility for it. Sigh, this world is becoming more and more chaotic. Sooner or later, there will be an all-out war in the southern and northern continent.
Klein finished his fried egg and replied with a smile.
The war has never stopped, sir. It's just that we've been able to enjoy peace. What a pity that such an important case wouldn't seek the help of private detectives like us.
Aaron flipped through the newspaper.
This news doesn't have much to do with us. What's really important is that the House of Lords and the House of Commons will pass a motion either today or tomorrow after a long debate. First is the Civil Servant Unified Examination Bill, as well as the relevant guidance and actual plans. Second is the establishment of the Atmospheric Pollution Council. And third, the establishment of the Independent Alkaline Industry Inspector. The latter two involve pollution. God, they're finally paying attention to this problem. The patients in the hospital with pulmonary attacks have been rising constantly.
Klein's smile suddenly beamed.
Has it finally been passed? I wonder how Benson's preparations are. Will it be affected by my death? That's good news.
Aaron mentioned Klein's employer.
To Mary, this is extremely good news. She wishes to make herself or her husband, Doragu, become one of the members of the National Atmospheric Pollution Council. She has a higher chance since she doesn't hold any positions in a commercial company and is a devotee of the goddess. Besides, in any organization, there's ultimately a need for balance. I suggested to her that she should frequent the club, since we have quite a number of House of Commons members of Parliament as club members.
In the Lowen Kingdom, the members of Parliament of the House of Commons were mainly composed of wealthy people and the representatives of certain nobles. However, there were also many professionals such as doctors, lawyers, priests, teachers, scientists, and accountants. The Epilogue Club targeted a variety of professionals in the middle class, without distinguishing between them by their political inclinations. Klein didn't know much about such things, so he just said a few words in response, before changing the subject.
Aaron, it's Friday today. Don't you need to head back to the hospital?
Aaron suddenly frowned.
No, I'm on leave. It's been terrible lately.
Klein drank a mouthful of black tea.
What happened?
Since Bakerland had just been assassinated, and Rosago's body had been thrown into a sewer far away, he didn't know when it would be found. Klein was concerned about the after effects and the imperfection of his disguise, so he didn't plan on taking missions that were too difficult or easily exposed his identity. Therefore, he was interested in simple matters which held potential and handsome rewards. Aaron put down the newspaper and sighed.
I've been very unlucky recently. I've had a few consecutive failed surgeries. Fortunately, there were no serious consequences. Otherwise, my license would have been revoked.
Although it wasn't big news for surgeons to cause deaths in the present era, since it was common, the penalties were still quite severe if a serious accident occurred due to a surgeon's negligence. Klein lowered his head and began to nibble at his bread.
Well, I can't help much. Well, actually I know of a luck enhancement ritual, but its effect is to send you above a gray fog.
After breakfast, he said goodbye to Aaron, went to withdraw £500 in cash, and gave £300 to Miss Bodyguard before returning home. While waiting for the photos to develop, he hoped for a simple job to be entrusted to him. Unfortunately, none of them came to him. In the evening, Klein prepared to head out again, his target Braveheart's bar. Taking the opportunity of having Miss Bodyguard around, he hoped to get in touch with more Beyonder circles.